All right, hello everyone. So in today's scenario, we are going to write a trigger for a scenario which one of our student got in Wipro interview, if I'm not wrong. So the scenario was like we need to create a community user every time we create a contact, and then assign that user to a public group. Let's say there is a public group called sales users. We need to assign that community user to that public group. Now this seems very easy scenario because what we need to do on the contact creation, we just need to create a user and then just need to add it to a public group. But somebody who has not done it earlier or in past, it will be really difficult because of two reasons. First, you need to create a community user via code. Many of us have created user, but most of the time normal Salesforce user, not the community user. So this makes the scenario tricky. And the second tricky part is to assign that user to a public group. Okay, most of us have already done this via the UI, like go to public group and add users and all. But via programming, via code, it is a bit difficult to add users, or not difficult. It's just that if you haven't done it, then it will be difficult for you to think about how to do that. Okay, so these two things make this scenario a bit tricky. Okay, so let me first write it down. Let's create a community user every time we create a contact and then assign a public group to that user. Simple. Okay, what we are going to do now, we will write a trigger. Okay, I'm going to write a user creation trigger. Okay, see, whenever we create a contact, that means the trigger will be on contact object. Okay, it is getting triggered by the contact creation. Okay, scenario is not talking about anything related to update or delete the user whenever you delete the contact or anything like that. So we will not touch upon any of those things. Let's keep it very simple. See, sometimes you also need to understand why that interviewer is asking this question. He is not asking this question because he want to see whether you know about update or delete or something. He wanted to know more about, have you ever created committee user via code, and then he wanted to see, have you ever added a user to public group via code. Okay, so we will start with this. Let's say now once a contact gets created, then we need to create a user. So we need to create a user that is a activity on related object, not on the core object which started the transaction. So that will be after. Okay, and it is only talking about the insert part. Like whenever you create a user, then whenever you create a contact, then create a user. So we will use the after insert. Okay, nothing else. Now, see, we will write it from the very scratch, the way we always write from the very scratch, and then we will try to improve it. Okay, so we will leave couple of gaps in our code so that we can improve it later on. Okay, but we will not make basic mistakes like adding a loop inside adding a sockle query inside a loop, or doing the DML inside the loop. We will not do those basic mistakes. Okay, so let us break this trigger into fundamental blocks. The first fundamental block is to create a user, and then the second fundamental block is to assign it to a public group. Okay, so first fundamental block is create a user. Second fundamental block is assign that user to a public group. Okay. So we see why we break a trigger into fundamental block is that, so that because we need not to focus on everything in the very beginning. We break the problem into smaller pieces and then tackle those smaller problem rather than thinking about the whole problem at once. So when we will work on the first fundamental block, our only worry will be about creating user. We will not be worried about how we will assign it to a public group. That is the another fundamental block which we will deal later. Okay, now creating user is normal thing, but for each contact we need to create a user. So we can do something like this. For contact, current contact, trigger dot new, and then here we can create users. Like normally we create user, so user new community user, anything you want to name it. Okay, now the difference between community user and normal user is that to normal user you can assign a normal profile and role, but to community user you'll have to assign community related profiles, and it also requires an additional field called the contact ID, which is mandatory. You have to provide value to that. Okay, so I already have a code for this. Let me just copy it because there is no point writing it all. Okay, that will be waste of a lot of time. So what I did, I just copied the code of user creation of a community user. Now we will not write insert you because that will be the user creation inside the loop. So what I'm going to do, I'll create a list of user. I'll tackle errors later, don't worry. So I'll create a list of user. Let's name it users to create, and okay. So what I'm going to do, I will add this u in this user list, and then outside loop, I will insert them. Okay. Now this is saying we got error. So what I'm going to do, see, we have to provide a profile ID, right? Because without profile ID, we will not be able to create it. Yep. See, I have copied it, so that is why it is giving error. I'll correct it. Don't worry. See, that is why when I give you a suggestion to write trigger on your pen paper first, that is because I want you to focus on the logic building part first rather than the syntax error, because syntax error can later be removed anytime, but the logic building part should be done at a time when your mind is fresh. So if you go on logic building after tackling 3-4 syntax error, then your mind will not be fresh. So that is why first and foremost thing to write anything, any trigger, any apex code or anything is logic building part, where we'll have to think about how we will do it, that how should be answered with the spare mind. Okay, we need to get the profile ID, because see, there is one option to ideally to just directly give a hard coded ID, but that's not a good developer will do. And if you have a good peer review process, then obviously it will fail in the peer review. So we will get profile community user profile. Okay. We can query select ID from profile where name is equals to, and here you just need to give the name of the community users. So okay, let's go to the profiles. Community user plus license we will be giving. So let's just copy the name. Okay. See, currently we are not doing any null checks and all in this code, because first aim is to build the logic for this, and later on we will try to improve it. Okay. So That's the user creation part. And see, normally what we do is that the last name should be your current contact dot last name, because we have copied it from somewhere else. It will not um, do that, but let us do that. Okay. And email ID should always be in the email ID format. Username should also be in the email ID format. So that is what you can take reference from current contact, because you have to do it for every contact. Otherwise, it will create the same user, duplicate user for every contact. So let us see current contact dot email. Similarly, username should also be current contact dot email. Okay, whatever it is, community nickname should be anything, sales community it is, so whatever. Okay, what we need to focus on is that profile ID and contact ID should be properly mapped. Okay, see, now in an interview you will not get enough time. The way we are writing, you will not get enough time. So how I normally do it is that I fundamentally break it to create a user logic section, and then I get the profile ID or anything, and then write down the mandatory things, like these are mandatory thing, this is also mandatory thing, this is I think also in mandatory thing. So just write down the mandatory thing and write down a line that we will provide necessary a field assignment to all the fields. That's it. See, we need not to waste also a lot of time. Later on, if we have a spare time, we can improve it. But for us, currently important part is to make sure that we are able to convey our message or convey our knowledge within a given time as well. We'll not get an hour to write a trigger, right? So skip the unimportant part or skip the repeated part sometimes. Then I will just put it as insert users to create. This will create users for us, just users for us. This is just the part one. Okay, now we have a bigger part, which is assign that user to public group. Okay, so when we come to this part, first we need to get that public group, like on which public group we want to assign these users to, right? So we will get that, we will query that. Okay, so public group is a part, comes as a part object called group. Okay, let's call it public group assign to and query it. Okay, so select ID comma name from group where name is equals to, and let's go to public group, because I want to fetch a public group which is a valid public group. Okay, so let's take the sales team, the name. Okay, now we've got the public group. Okay, now what we need to do, we need to assign each of these user to this public group. Okay, so when we have to do something on a list of your things, a list of users, we do it with the help of loop. So what I'm going to do, we will have a loop on users, user, current user, and where is the list? This is the list. Okay, okay, before that we can do size check and all those things. I'm not doing mandatory size checks and all. That is something on you to improve on your code. Okay, I'm just doing the logic building part, so that is where we are right now. Now on this loop inside users, how, see, user does not have a field like we can say current user, sorry, so current user dot group and assign the public group dot id. There is nothing like that. So current user is not associated with groups directly. Okay, user is another object and group is another object. There is something called group member, which is a junction between group and user object. So we need to take help of that group member object. Okay, because we cannot directly associate it. Okay, so we will do the same thing. Okay, and if someone has not done this prior, then obviously it will be difficult for him to do it in front of interviewer. All those users, if you face any kind of issue like this where you have not done this, you can still be frank and tell the interviewer that, okay, I haven't get the opportunity to do this via code yet, but it's a good question and it's a good thing for me to explore just after the interview, because you obviously you cannot do it this way because that is wrong. So sometimes you are not left with any option but to say that I don't know. Okay, and that is fine. I mean, it's okay. But now that we have got this scenario, we will try to write it. Group member, we will create an instance of group member and then we will use that. Okay, so in the group member, what we need to do, we need to assign, see, we will create an instance of group member, and then in this current member, we will associate it with this particular public group and this particular user. So this group member will need to provide, user as well as public group to this and then insert this. Okay. So for current member, there is a field called user or group ID. So this will basically tell that who will be the participant of it. Okay, you can also you can also add another public group as a group member. Here we will be using user. So the field name is user or group ID. This basically talks about who is going to be the participant of the group. So who is going to be the participant? Current user dot id. And now the second field is current member dot, and this time we will associate it with group id, like which public group we are talking about. So we are talking about this public group dot id. Okay, now I gave the wrong spelling. Member. Okay, now we cannot write insert current member, because if we do that, then that will be the violation of having a DML inside the loop. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a list here, list of group member. Okay. Group member to insert. All right. New group member, new list of group member. See, I'm not very, I'm not fan of copying the code. So I mostly, if it is not variable name, then I just prefer to write it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to add the current member to this list, and then outside the loop we will insert the list. Okay, all right, so let's go outside of the loop and write down the insert. Okay, normally in a real code, you will not directly write insert. You will first check what you are going to insert. If the size is greater than 0 or not, then you write insert. Okay. Even if you get to write trigger or something, then also you follow the same approach. All right. So there were two fundamental blocks, and we have covered code for both of these blocks. Okay. Now, looking to a layman or looking to a normal person, this will look like a fine code. Like this will work. We have not written any query inside the loop. We have not written any DML inside the loop, and this code is also fine. Like the current community user, this community user code, if you run on the anonymous code, this will work. And if you run this and anonymous code, this will also work. But there are many problems. Okay, so now in order to see the problems, let us not rely on me. Let us now try to create a contact and then see if this works or not. Okay, so let us go to contacts. See, there is something new called the intelligence view. I just saw it yesterday. So, okay, let me clone this. Let us name this Mr. Test User Creation Trigger. Okay. And when we save it, we should either, I mean, this should either be successful or we should get some errors. Okay. See, we've got error. So what it says is that mixed DML error, because our trigger is on contact and we are doing operation on user and group both, which are the setup object. Okay, so there is also a hidden mixed DML error hidden behind this scenario. So if you normally just give it a code like this, then he will ask a question like, did you ever think about the mixed DML error? Did you ever get the mixed DML error? So this is also a tricky part. Okay. Now, so how to avoid mixed DML error? We will move the code to future method, right? Now here, if you see, we have inserted the users as well as the group. So which part to move to? Like both needed to be moved because both are the operations on setup object. Okay, so what we'll do, let's create a new class. Let's call it group handler, or let's call it user handler. Okay, and let's write now what we can do. So from here, from the contact, just pass all the contact and do all the processing in the future method. So let's create a future method. Let's name it public static void create user assignment, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, now here, if you what we can pass from trigger is the list of contact, and let's name it all contacts and save this. So this will again give us error that future method is will not accept the list of contact. Okay, so we will not be able to pass the contacts directly. So what are our options now? What we can do instead is create a set of IDs, and then instead of contacts, just pass those IDs, because we are left with that option only. Because all of our code is needed to be moved. It's not like this part is fine, just this part need to be moved. Everything need to be moved to future method, because this will not work at all in trigger. Both of these operations are in setup object. So instead of Uh, here, what we need to do for the current contact to trigger dot new, and here we need to create so here we need to create a set of ID. We can call it all contact IDs new set of IDs, and then pass the contact ID to this. Okay. So by this, we will be able to pass everything. Now, instead of this code, let us just comment this. Okay. Instead of this code, let us call this Apex class. You can make it compatible by using the list of IDs only, or passing the set of IDs. That is on you. Okay. Let us do this. Yeah. Ideally, we'll use set. Okay. Now here you will get all the contacts. All we need to do is some copy pasting and some logic building. Okay, so first step will be to get the list of all the contacts, because we were not able to get it directly. We have used this workaround. Okay, but the first step will be to get the all contacts, because on the contacts we will have the loop. Okay, so select ID, comma, last name, comma, email, because these are the fields which we have used in this assignment. So whichever field you use in this assignment, you have to get first, otherwise you will get errors. Okay, from contact where ID in all contacts. Now we will get all the contacts. So now instead of looping trigger.new, we will loop the all contacts. That's it. Okay. So for contact, current contact, let's loop it to all contacts and just copy the code. Okay. Let us use the same iteration variable. Okay. Copy this. Before that, let us copy the list of users to create, which will be outside of the loop. Okay. And then copy this code.
Mohit, in line number 15, I guess. We forgot to query the profile.
Yep. We will copy that as well. Insert user to create. 。 The good thing is that we made a working code already on trigger, so we just need to copy things and put it in a right place. That's it. And we not to worry about any other thing. So this should also be fine. Okay. Now, this is the first part. Okay, we'll be able to insert the user. Okay, and then after that, we will copy the assignment part, which is here. I think everything will be copied, nothing will be changed. So let us copy this. Okay. Now let us save this. Okay. Now let's try if it is working or not. Okay. We have copied code, removed code from here, calling the class, the handler. I think it should work now. Let us see. So let's clone this. Test creation trigger and email ID is rows at the rate edge. So let that be. And we are able to create the contact. So because this is the trigger and assignment part is happening in the asynchronous trigger context, you will not get any immediate errors as well. Okay, if you check the logs, we need to see if it was able to run the future handler. So because in the first attempt there was an error, if you see in this time future handler ran and it ran successfully. So let us see if a user got created or not with the name test user trigger or something like that. Okay, so let's go to the list of user. See, this is the user creation trigger, and this got created with the community customer community plus user. Okay, so that is, and if we check the public group, the user creation trigger is also here. So this trigger ran perfectly fine and we were able to now it's not like that this is perfect. This is not perfect. This is nowhere near to perfect. This can be improved a lot. Like user creation should happen in a method, and then from that method you should call another method which should be responsible to add the group members in the public group. It should not be done like it should not be done in the same method. They should be separated by two different methods. Okay, and a lot of null checks we have not done, so we have to do null checks. We have to do a lot of checking part, like if I assign this current member group id, this group id, we need to make sure that this particular public group assigned to has some ID in it. So we need to make sure that this is returning something. Otherwise, this will give us an exception. Okay. Similarly, there are a couple of queries we have done. We have to make sure that they are returning us value. Otherwise, we'll get as object no rows to assign to kind of errors. Whenever we are doing the DML, we also need to do the null checks and all. But more or less, those are the cosmetic changes which we do to improve how our trigger and how our code will function and look like. In an interview, when you give scenarios like this, you need to see how much time you have left on your hand and then how much improvement you can do. First thing which you should focus on should be always on the logic building, the main logic syntax part. the main logical thing which interviewer has asked you to write particular scenario. Sometimes even when I was of your experience, I used to ask, shall I just write the main logic or shall I go for the complete trigger? And in 90% scenario, the interview used to say that just write down the logic. Okay, so sometimes you can also do that, because see, he is not asking you a trigger scenario to see if you know the trigger framework or not. Has that been the question? Then his question should be around the trigger framework, not the particular logic. He want to see your logic building approach, and that is why he has given you a scenario. So let's hit the wall with bang and tell him, shall I just focus on logic building? And if he says yes, then just focus on the logic rather than all the syntaxical sugar coating and all. But if he says that no, write the complete trigger, because sometimes interviewer want to see whether you can write a good trigger in a good structured manner or not, then go for the complete trigger. Okay, so for as per me, this scenario is not easy at all, because there are many gray areas in this trigger scenario. First user creation, then adding it to a public group, and then at the end there was a DML mixed DML error scenarios as well. Also, the user which you are the contact which you are assigning to, there should be an account associated with this contact, and if that account owner does not have any role, then also it will give an error, because that role will be pulled to the community user as well. So yeah, let me wrap it up by concluding what we did and how we did, and then we will pick the other topic. Okay, so the scenario was that we needed to create a community user each time we create a contact, and then we needed to assign that user to a public group named sales team. Okay, so what we did, we wrote a trigger on contact. This is after insert, because we needed to do something on user object after account getting created, because we needed the contact ID to be associated with the user. Okay, so that is why we chose the after, and there was only scenario about insert. There was nothing about update or delete, so we did not pick anything related to update or delete. Okay, sometimes in an interview you can also ask, sir, do we have any case for the update as well, or shall we also consider the delete as well? Most of the time they'll not tell each and everything, because see, you have a very limited time to write in the trigger. So sometimes you write logic for insert and tell him your approach for what you think about update and delete. Okay, then what we did, we created a loop on trigger.new all contacts and got the IDs, all the IDs, so that we can pass those IDs to this class's method, because it was the DML was happening on user and group object. Both of these are the setup objects, so we cannot do these things in the same transaction because of the mixed DML error. So what we did, we moved these things to a future method. Okay, this create user assignment is a future method, and we pass the list of all the contact IDs. Then we went to this class, got all the contacts by these IDs we got, and then we created a loop on this contact, created a new user, and added that user to a list, so that we can insert the user outside of the loop in one DML. Okay, had we inserted it right after this line, then it would have been a DML inside the loop, and that will exhaust our DML limit. Okay, it is just like you have, let's say, two places, A and B. You have a car to go from A and B, and you have 100 boxes to move. Okay, all 100 boxes can come inside the car in the first attempt, but still, if you will move it one by one box at once, then that will be the wastage of resources. Like, you will be wasting a lot of petrol, you will be wasting a lot of your time, and that is just insane. If all 100 boxes can come in the car in first attempt, then why will you move it one by one? You will move all 100 at once, and then drop those boxes to location B in one attempt. So that will save 99 transactions between place A and B. It will save a lot of fuel, it will save a lot of time, it will save a lot of energy. Same applies here. If you can do the DML on all the users at once, why will you put it inside the loop and do it one by one? That will be the wastage of a lot of resources and time and energy. Okay. So that is why we will create a list of user, add this U to this users to create list and insert this user. Now that we have users created, we'll have to add those users in the public group. To add a users in a public group, what we will do, we will first get which public group on which we need to assign to. And once we've got that, we will create a loop on users, so that because for all users we need to do this activity, and then we will create an instance of group group member object, which is the association between public group and user. Okay. And then on this current member, we will provide which user to assign to and which group to assign to. And then as this is a loop activity, we have to again add it to a list and then do the DML outside the loop. Okay, this is not a perfect code or something. This also needs a lot of improvement, but I hope you guys will be doing it on your own by adding null check, by adding a lot of try catch and everything. So that is on you guys. Okay, we can do that. We can do that. We can do the database DML operations instead of direct DML. That depends on business use case, whether you want to allow partial processing or not. But in a trigger, when you get to write it on an interview, you can definitely do that. That will obviously tell that you also know about the database DMLs, which will be a advantage thing for you in an interview. So you can definitely do that. All right. So yeah, if you want to do database.dml, that should also be fine. Okay.